Hello good people, and welcome back to another math video. This time we are going to be talking about absolute value, also known as the distance from zero. Now sometimes this concept is a little confusing for students because usually before we talk about absolute value, we've done a lot of talk about integers and their values. And we'll say something like positive 3 up here on the number line has a greater value than negative 3. And going back to the previous video where we thought about integers in terms of temperature, money, or people that we might meet, if you have a positive $3, that is of course more money than if you have a negative $3. But now that we introduced the concept of absolute value, we think of absolute value as the distance from zero. So in that case, the absolute value of negative 3 and positive 3 would be the same. What? Yes, and the reason why they're the same is because they both are the same distance from zero. When we write absolute value of a number, we have these vertical bars that are around the number, and that tells us that we are looking for the absolute value of, in this case, negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Why is that? It's because it is 3 units away from 0. Now, the absolute value of 3 is also 3. Why is that? Well, because positive 3 is also 3 units away from 0. But, how can they both be positive? Well, another way to think about it is maybe to think about the distance from a real thing. So, if this is school, and over here is my house, and over here is your house, they both have a certain distance away from the school. And we wouldn't say that one has a positive distance from the school and one has a negative distance from the school. They just both have a certain distance from the school. Now let's imagine that those distances are the same. So let's imagine that I live 4 miles from school, and let's imagine that you live 4 miles from school. We both live 4 miles from school. That is the distance from school. That is our absolute value away from school. Because absolute value is a distance away from 0, absolute value is always, always, always going to be a positive number because we're talking about the distance from 0. So even though we may be talking about a negative number, the distance it is from 0, we'll talk about it in positive terms. Alright, here's a few practice problems for you. Try to say them in your head. Try to beat me. Okay, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. The absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8. The absolute value of negative 7 is 7. The absolute value of 4 is 4. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1. The absolute value of 10 is 10. And the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. Another thing to keep in mind when we're solving problems that have absolute value is that we need to take care of the absolute value first before we take care of any operations. So when you look at this problem, you do not want to say negative 7 plus 4. What you want to do is take care of the absolute values of each of these numbers first before you do the addition. So the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. The absolute value of 4 is 4. And so 7 plus 4 is 11. I'll show you that one more time with a subtraction problem. Do not do this problem as negative 8 minus negative 3. You need to take care of the absolute value first. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So 8 minus 3 is 5. Okay, let's do a quick little recap. Number one, absolute value is the distance from 0. Number 2, the absolute value of a number is always positive, regardless of what the number is. Let's say -10. -10 is 10 jumps away from 0. So the absolute value, that distance from 0, is 10. And the last big point we'll say is, number 3, always solve the absolute value before completing the operation. If you have a problem like -7 plus, the absolute value of -7 plus the absolute value of -2, we are going to figure out those absolute values first. So we have 7 plus 2, and that will equal 9. Okay, well that's it. A little bit of absolute value. I hope that helps, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon.